She and her nuns were violently evicted and cast on the world. Hearing of this with indignation, Abélard at once offered the homeless sisters the deserted paraclete and all its belongings. The offer was thankfully accepted, and Héloïse with her family removed there to spend the remainder of her life. It does not appear that Abélard and Héloïse ever saw each other at this time, although he used every means in his power to provide for her safety and comfort. This was in 1129. 2 years later, the paraclete was confirmed to Héloïse by a papal bull. It remained a convent, and a famous one, for over 600 years. After this, Abélard paid several visits to the convent, which he justly regarded as his foundation, in order to arrange a rule of life for its inmates, and to encourage them in their vocation. Although on these occasions he saw nothing of Héloïse, he did not escape the malignant suspicions of the world, nor of his own flock, which now became more unruly than ever, so much so that he was compelled to live outside the monastery. Excommunication was tried in vain, and even the efforts of a papal legate failed to restore order. For Abélard, there was nothing but fear within and conflict without. It was at this time, about 1132, that he wrote his famous Historia Calamitatum, from which most of the above account of his life has been taken. In 1134, after 9 years of painful struggle, he definitely left Saint Gildas, without, however, resigning the abbotship. For the next 2 years he seems to have led a retired life, revising his old works and composing new ones. Meanwhile, by some chance, his History of Calamities fell into the hands of Héloïse at the Paraclete, was devoured with breathless interest, and rekindled the flame that seemed to have smouldered in her bosom for 13 long years. Overcome with compassion for her husband, for such he really was, she at once wrote to him a letter which reveals the first healthy human heartbeat that had found expression in Christendom for 1,000 years. Thus began a correspondence which, for genuine tragic pathos and human interest, has no equal in the world's literature. In Abélard, the scholarly monk has completely replaced the man. In Héloïse, the saintly nun is but a veil assumed in loving obedience to him to conceal the deep-hearted, faithful, devoted flesh and blood woman. And such a woman! It may well be doubted if, for all that constitutes genuine womanhood, she ever had an equal. If there is salvation in love, Héloïse is in the heaven of heavens. She does not try to express her love in poems, as Mrs. Browning did, but her simple, straightforward expression of a love that would share Francesca's fate with her lover rather than go to heaven without him, yields and has yielded matter for 100 poems. She looks forward to no salvation, for her chief love is for him. Domino specialiter, sua singulariter. As a member of the species, woman, I am the Lord's. As Héloïse, I am yours. Nominalism with a vengeance. But to return to Abélard. Permanent quiet in obscurity was plainly impossible for him, and so in 1136 we find him back at Sainte Genevieve, lecturing to crowds of enthusiastic students. He probably thought that during the long years of his exile, the envy and hatred of his enemies had died out. But he soon discovered that he was greatly mistaken. He was too marked a character, and the tendency of his thought too dangerous for that. Besides, he emptied the schools of his rivals, and adopted no conciliatory tone towards them. The natural result followed. In the year 1140, his enemies, headed by Saint Bernard, who had long regarded him with suspicion, raised a cry of heresy against him, as subjecting everything to reason. Bernard, who was nothing if not a fanatic, and who managed to give vent to all his passions by placing them in the service of his God, at once denounced him to the Pope, to cardinals, and to bishops, in passionate letters full of rhetoric, demanding his condemnation as a perverter of the bases of the faith. At that time, a great ecclesiastical council was about to assemble at Sens, and Abélard, feeling certain that his writings contained nothing which he could not show to be strictly orthodox, demanded that he should be allowed to explain and dialectically defend his position in open dispute before it. But this was above all things what his enemies dreaded. They felt that nothing was safe before his brilliant dialectic. Bernard even refused to enter the lists with him, and preferred to draw up a list of his heresies in the form of sentences sundered from their context in his works, some of them indeed from works which he never wrote, and to call upon the council to condemn them. These theses may be found in Dentzinger's Enchiridion Symbolorum et Definitionum, pages 109 sequentes. Abélard, clearly understanding the scheme, feeling its unfairness, and knowing the effect of Bernard's lachrymose pulpit rhetoric upon sympathetic ecclesiastics who believed in his power to work miracles, appeared before the council only to appeal from its authority to Rome. The council, though somewhat disconcerted by this, proceeded to condemn the disputed theses, and sent a notice of its action to the Pope. Fearing that Abélard, who had friends in Rome, might proceed thither and obtain a reversal of the verdict, Bernard set every agency at work to obtain a confirmation of it before his victim could reach the Eternal City. And he succeeded. The result was for a time kept secret from Abélard, who, now over 60 years old, set out on his painful journey. Stopping on his way at the famous hospitable Abbey of Cluny, he was most kindly entertained by its noble abbot, who well deserved the name of Peter the Venerable. Here, apparently, he learned that he had been condemned and excommunicated, for he went no further. Peter offered the weary man an asylum in his house, which was gladly accepted, and Abélard, at last convinced of the vanity of all worldly ambition, settled down to a life of humiliation, meditation, study and prayer. Soon afterward, Bernard made advances toward reconciliation, which Abélard accepted, whereupon his excommunication was removed. Then the once proud Abélard, shattered in body and broken in spirit, had nothing more to do but to prepare for another life. And the end was not far off.